Purpose of my video today is to talk to primarily Shopsmith owners, but it may persuade others that Shopsmith is a reasonable tool to purchase. Um, my history goes back to when I was little. My grandfather lived 2 houses down the street. He had a Shopsmith 10ER, one of the original ones, and I learned all about woodworking watching him use it and doing some limited amount of work myself. I definitely learned the concept of kickback when I watched a piece of board fly about 5 feet and out through a window. That made an everlasting impression on me, and I've never been hurt by kickback ever since. In 1980, when I got married, I bought a Shopsmith Mark V. Had the bandsaw and jigsaw attachment, which I loved. And I had a very small garage, and so it was perfect for my situation. Career, kids, etc. I kind of got away from doing a lot of woodworking and had the fortune last year to retire, and now I'm pretty much full-time in a shop. Also had the fortune that I could afford to build a 20 by 24 extension on my garage, and it's now my dedicated wood shop. So in 2020, I bought a Shopsmith Mark VII with the Power Pro stock, and I'm extremely happy with it. The advantage is you get a 2 full horsepower out of it if you run it on 220 power. I think it's a great purchase because you can run it on 110 or 220. I made a pigtail, so if I had to move it out of my shop and didn't have a 220 connection, I can run it on 110. It will also run on 50 or 60 hertz, which makes it very versatile. So since retiring, I've noticed that I've become more and more interested in lathe work, and recently did a course at a woodworking school outside of Indianapolis, and have been turning bowls, etc., in boxes, and very much enjoying that process. The Shopsmith really is competitive with a full-size lathe. I know there are mini, middies, and then full-size lathes. The Shopsmith has a capability of easily doing a 36-inch length spindle, and the center of the headstock to the top of the tube is just over 7.5 inches. So in theory, you could turn something that was starting out in the rough 15 inches in diameter. That's a pretty good size bowl and turning, and it may not be practical, but I have turned 12-inch bowls with no difficulty whatsoever because of clearances. So a couple things that I have identified that I think can definitely make the Shopsmiths a lot more useful. There's a predominance of people using a thing called either a safety drive or a ring drive attached to the headstock. There's a ring with fairly sharp edge, and it will allow for the piece to spin if you get a catch, rather than tearing it up sometimes is what happens with the spur drive. Turns out that One Way out of Canada does make one that fits the Shopsmith. This is something I actually fabricated myself. I cut the end off of a dead center tailstock piece, and then cut the spurs off of a Shopsmith spur drive, and welded it on, and then ground it to be the configuration that I wanted, and it seems to work quite well. The other thing that can be an issue on the Shopsmith, and I have the optional tool rest package on the Shopsmith right now, but for smaller pieces, the maneuverability of the rest can be an issue, and part of that is because the carriage is several inches wide, the base, and on most lathes there's a banjo that's a lot narrower than that, so there's more maneuverability with the lathe rest than with the carriage. Now, the solution that I found that works quite well is I have taken the live centers and I bought, and they're relatively inexpensive, a Morse Taper 2 to Morse Taper 2 extension, which extends this out about 4 inches. I have found that it is extremely sturdy, and I don't have any perception of play in it. By the same token, if I extend the quill out 4 inches, I can feel a tiny little give. I'm sure it's thousandths of an inch and within tolerances, but this configuration is actually quite reliable, and I have had no problems utilizing it. So what it does is it gives you more room, even on a small piece, that if you put the quill out a couple inches and then the extension there, that it will give you a lot more room to maneuver with the tool rest. So back to the optional tool rest. It comes with multiple rests, smaller ones, curved for doing bowls, and it has a lot more maneuverability. The one complaint that I had is that the way this piece comes, there is a metal block that actually was rotated in this configuration, and this handle was on the inside of the piece. And you would find that you would constantly be bumping handles here. And I'm not really sure why they did that, unless there was an issue with trademark and they had to be careful of patent infringement. But I just made a walnut block to do this function. So if I was going to plead with Shopsmith, I think that you could redo this particular piece and have it retro where it will fit on the tailstock. And it works much better because at least this now I can do without having to reach inside, and it doesn't run into the other handle. The other feature is this is what locks the main piece down, and it has the type of configuration where it will toggle up and down so that if you're bumping into something, you lift it up and move it. But the beauty of this now is that even with this in all the way, this will turn without hitting anything. So it works quite well. The reason for the tape is I noticed pretty quickly when you use this that after 10 minutes of turning, sawdust will fall down in between the nut, and then the lever will no longer come up. And the easy fix was I just put a little tape on there, and it keeps that from happening. The other thing is that the handle they use is similar to the one that's on the carriage, and it's at an angle. So this would protrude up a little bit higher. I just took and ground it off so it's level with the top of the nut, so there's less protrusion up into the workspace. And I find that that's worked much, much better. But if Shopsmith would redo this block, it would be great. The next project I'm going to do is actually take some round stock and make a longer base on the tool rest. I'm going to make a new tool rest, and that way I almost don't have to move this piece, and I'll be able to do all my elevation and rotation just with 1 and 2 controls rather than having to use a bunch of them. But we'll see how that works. The other recent idea that I had was to configure this dust collection. So I turned a piece of 2x4 that fits snugly into this PVC pipe and then down into this opening here in the carriage, and with just a simple wire tie, I have the flange right in front of the workpiece where I can put it on when I'm sanding. What's nice is because it moves with the carriage, it's always in the right position. If I had a bigger piece, I'd just have to slide it back a little bit farther so it wasn't protruding into the workspace. So this flange I got is a 2.5 inch, and it's from PowerTech. And what I hooked into it, I couldn't do it easily one-handed, but this is actually the piece that comes with the Shopsmith, and it can connect to the sander and into the lower saw guard for dust collection. So it makes it quite convenient to use with the lathe, and it's cheap. I spent a couple bucks rather than buying an arm that has to be adjusted all the time. So I hope that helps, and I hope Shopsmith is listening. I did want to add one thing to the end of this video. Now, I'm an avid Shopsmith owner, had a Shopsmith forever, and certainly love the tool. But I have bought other items. Yes, that's a saw stop, and but here's one of the things I recently did. I bought a Mark V from the 80s on Craigslist for a few $100s. I got really lucky. It was a cabinet maker who was retiring, and he had this Shopsmith that was in really good shape. But I've seen this done, and it's worked great. I took the legs off, flipped it up on its side, and mounted it on the wall, and it's now my dedicated drill press and drum sander. And when I want to use the mortising chisels, it's there for my use. So I love the Shopsmiths. This is classic. This thing is 40 years old, and it runs like a top. So just thought I would share that as well. So um, some people talk about, they like a product, but I can prove that I've loved them for a long time.